Well, happy Thursday to you. Thanks for giving me 5 to 7 minutes for another morning of devotions. Today we're going to take the final day and look at Jesus' miracles. He did many more, but we're going to stop our study today. And at the end, I will tell you what you can look forward to starting next week. So we're going to be in Luke chapter 7 this morning, Luke chapter 7, verses 11 through 17. We're going to look at the miracle of the widow's son. As you turn there or as you get ready, just really quick, one last time, what are the 4 things we want to remember about the miracles of Jesus? Remember, a miracle is a divine act by God in which God reveals himself to his people. It's an act that is contradictory or it transcends a natural law. In the Bible, it's called a miracle. It's almost also called a sign, or it's also called a wonder. And then finally, Jesus used the miracles to introduce that he's bringing God's kingdom to his people, and that salvation is here, and it is in the form of Jesus Christ. He is the promised Messiah, the one that points to God, the one that can make the relationship between a fallen humanity and a perfect God happen, and that's in the person of Jesus. He is God, and he is from God. So as you get ready to go to Luke chapter 7, verses 11 through 17, I want you to go back and do you remember that show? It was called Ripleys Believe It or Not. When I was late elementary, early middle school years, 7th, 8th, ninth grade, it was on TBS. And there was a show, it was called Ripley's Believe It or Not, and people would go on there and they would do crazy things. They would do death-defying things. Sometimes they would do disgusting activities. And I sat there and I watched it. One thing that really stuck out that I haven't forgotten after all these years, over 20 years, is that they interviewed a woman, and she had never trimmed her nails, and her nails ended up being like 3 feet long, and they were just curled into each other, and it was just really weird, and it was gross, and it was just very interesting. Now Jesus is in the middle of doing something amazing. It's not disgusting, it is not, but it is death-defying. He's going to raise the widow's son. So let's get into the text, Luke chapter 7, verses 11 through 17, and we're going to talk about this miracle. Now, for you Bible scholars, you might realize and remind yourself that this is the same area that Elisha raised the Shunammite woman's son in 2 Kings chapter 4. Now, during this time, Jesus had unbelievers that were following him, and Jesus wanted to minister to those unbelievers. He wanted to minister to them physically, but more importantly, he wanted to minister to them spiritually. He wanted to speak to their spiritual needs and help them come to a relationship with God through his sacrifice, his crucifixion that is coming. As you read this story, you're going to see that the family had gathered because the widow's son had passed away. Now, there's quite a crowd. It tells us 2 things. First of all, it's a tight-knit family. Second of all, this lady had quite an influence in her town, and many people came out to mourn her loss. Maybe because she was a widow, maybe because she was a sweet lady. We're not sure, but we do know that there were many people that had gathered together. Now, it's interesting that this lady's a widow, and you need to understand the Bible times of being a widow. A widow, she would have to rely upon her family to provide her needs. This was her only child. There was no one left to care for her. Also, this was her son that passed away, so the family name would die off with him. There was no government to support her in her time of need to be able to provide for her food or supplies. She would have to either work for that or rely upon someone else. Usually and typically in Bible times, the man would go out and work in the fields while the wife was to stay at home and work in the home, raising the children and helping to educate them. Now I want you to notice that Jesus' love for this woman and for the people. Scripture says he saw the woman and he had compassion for her. He never saw people as an inconvenience, but he saw them as an opportunity to meet their physical needs. So more importantly, he could meet their spiritual needs. He met a physical need to be able to open the door to talk to them about their spiritual needs. Notice here that this was one of the only times that Jesus offered his help. No one came to get Jesus. If you look back At the other miracles that we have looked at, people approached Jesus. Remember yesterday with Jairus and his daughter? That man approached Jesus. Jesus saw the need, and then this is the time that he offered it. He went and he offered to help, and he touched the dead body. When he would touch a dead body, this would make him ceremoniously unclean, and he would have to undergo the cleaning ceremonies to get himself pure again. That didn't bother Jesus because he wanted to have that touch. He wanted to have that compassion. Now, when Jesus touched the casket, there was an immediate response by the young man. There was another resurrection by Jesus. How did Jesus do this miracle? He said a word. Notice the power of the words of Jesus that he has. And today we believe those same words we hold in our lap, we have on our phone when we read the Bible. Those same words can continue to bring about miraculous results if we have the faith and trust in the words of Christ and reread them and obey them. Now, I want you to notice the people's response. They were in awe. They were in wonder. Sometimes the different translations, they said they were fearful. Not fearful as in afraid of heights or afraid of spiders or afraid of the dark, but they stepped back and they went, wow, this is amazing. I cannot believe it. I cannot believe I just witnessed this. I cannot believe I just saw this with my own eyes. And they recognized how special Jesus was. And when he said these things, the miracles backed up his claims. He said, I am coming from God. And then he performed the miracle, and the people began to believe in him because of the miracles. Now, Jesus' popularity, it continued to increase. Word about this, it spread. It spread all through that region and all through that area. And Jesus' popularity, it took a great increase, which is good, but unfortunately it was the increase due to his miracles. It wasn't due to his message. And so it's another opportunity to remind ourselves, what's the point of the miracle? It's to validate that Jesus is from God, and it's to drive us to Jesus, not so much for his miracles, but for his message and what he accomplished on the cross, and that is salvation for you and I. So 2 questions to apply to this before we end our time today is, the first thing is, does your heart break for people who are hurting? We have many people in the world that are hurting. They're hurting emotionally, physically, financially, mentally, and spiritually. Did your heart break for them, or do you just look at them sometimes and see them as an inconvenience? The second question I have for you is, are you in awe of the power of Jesus? These people, they looked at Jesus. They were professional mourners. They were family. They were friends in the town. And they saw what Jesus did, and they looked at him, and they were just in awe of what Jesus could do. How about you? Is that your response to the words of Christ? Do you sit in awe of what he has said, or do you just brush it off and keep going with your day? I hope that you've enjoyed our study on the miracles of Jesus. Starting on Monday, we're going to start a 12-day study on the life of the disciples. We're going to take one day and look at each disciple. So starting on Monday, I hope you join me, and we'll be looking at the 12 disciples. Thanks for giving me 5 to 7 minutes today, and I trust that you will continue to grow in your relationship with Jesus. If I can help in any way, please reach out. Have a great weekend. I'll see you online Sunday morning around 9:30 for our service at Heartland Baptist Church. Have a great weekend.